Howard Jones. I'm not sure what I am really, but I'm currently an organizational development coach with a number of programs, including the Accelerated Growth Program and this particular program. My background is, I guess I've had I mean, you'd like to think these things are strategic. There's nothing strategic about it, but I've had a career which has involved spending 20 years plus in a huge international corporate organization. And then the last 17 or 18 years running my own businesses. So I ran a publishing business with the RIBA, and I've run a successful consultancy since 2007. So I guess what's very fortunate is I've picked up, hopefully, the good habits from both, because I think that some of the things that happen in the corporate world are very positive, some of the processes and some of the policies and tools, but also when you're running your own business and being entrepreneurial, obviously you've got to adapt those to suit your current circumstances. So delighted that Dewi's asked me to run this cafe session. I even brought my coffee along just so it felt like a cafe session. As far as the session's concerned, I do have some slides and I will run through them, but please stop me at any stage, ask questions. And I've added some links to the slides, so we'll make sure you get a copy of the slides. And you can actually have a look at those links when you've got time. I was quite smiling really at the thought of, I think it was Polly's ever positive way of looking at things, isn't it? Planning for an awesome 2021. I almost was tempted to look up the word awesome to see whether it could be seen as something pretty challenging as well as something pretty great. And I was thinking earlier, if we could actually make sure everyone has an awesome 2021, I think we'd have about 1 million people on this cafe today, wouldn't we? It's obviously going to be another challenging year from what we're experiencing and hearing about today, and what's going to happen to us in Wales from probably the 24th of December onward. But what we've got to do, I think, is just go back to good, sound, solid principles of planning and make sure that we take advantage of what we can. So what I'm going to run through, first of all, is being clear about where we want to be as individuals and as an organization. The one advantage, people often say to me, it must be great to be self-employed. And I say, well, sit down here, pour us a drink and tell me why. And they talk about things like, well, you manage yourself, you can have holidays whenever you fancy it, etc., etc. And I often say to them, yes, I manage myself, but actually it's all the customers and clients who manage us. And also, if I have a holiday, nobody pays me, which is something they don't kind of think about really. But I think one of the advantages we do have, and I'm sure it may have motivated you, is we can actually choose what we want to do and how we want to do it. And our personal goals and objectives are absolutely critical in this kind of planning process. Another thing I just want to spend a little bit of time on, and if these seem obvious, then I'm not going to make any apologies, because I work with quite large SMEs with up to like 100 to 250 people. And sometimes it's fascinating when we're talking about strategic planning to actually ask the question, where are you now against the objectives, the goals, the strategies that you have? And quite often, people aren't certain where they are now. So we need to think about evaluating our current situation. What I'm going to share with you over the next kind of half an hour or so are some practical tools that you can use for planning. Copies of them are available on the links I'm going to send you, but also they're the kind of things that you may have come across before, you may have even played with them before, you may never have heard of them before. But what I've chosen are ones that I think, certainly running a small business, are very practical. The key word being, they may be based on academic study and research, and they may be used by big organizations. But believe me, they work for us as small organizations as well. And there are obviously questions and answers throughout, but if not, we'll have an opportunity to have a quick chat and pick up any specific questions you've got as we go or at the end. And as I say, I put some links in to some resources. And what I've also put on the first page, you might have noticed there, I put my email address. So if you feel, well, if you say, I quite like the look of that balanced scorecard you showed us, but I wouldn't mind some more information. I've got oodles of information. It's just how much we can share and how much you want to kind of go into detail. So does that look like the kind of thing you were expecting, Jeanette and Rosa?
Yeah, that's fine. Very useful.
Rosa's on mute, I think.
Yeah, she is. I have told her, but she wants to click the button.
She's choosing to be quiet. Rosa, don't hesitate to come in if you've got any questions. So planning, a lot of people find planning quite a negative thing, and it's quite interesting. I'm doing a session tomorrow afternoon with a client of mine in West Wales, all on Zoom, and she's already saying, "Oh God, I'm not looking forward to planning." And I think we will have a great session, and she will thoroughly enjoy it because planning is very simple, isn't it? Somebody described it as the thinking bit you do before you act. And those steps there are all that it's about, aren't they? Let's be clear about the goals that we have for our business, for ourselves. Let's make a plan. And some people argue, and I can understand it, that actually the process of planning is in some ways more important than the plan that results, because it's the having to think ahead, having to think about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, etc., rather than you might end up with a plan, and particularly in the current climate, your plan you might feel is out of date as soon as you've written it, but that's not the point. We've got to keep thinking about the future and moving forward. And then the key is, of course, that third one, isn't it? Actually doing something with it. One of the scariest things I come across working again with quite large SMEs is they have a plan. They may look at it perhaps a couple of times a year, but it doesn't actually live and breathe. And whatever plan you end up doing, whether it's the incredible plan or the cunning plan from Baldrick, make sure you actually, it's in a form that you can work with, and it becomes a living, breathing document, that it actually impacts on how you spend your time, because that is one of the most valuable resources you've got. Stick to it. And another kind of big lesson to learn, I think, with planning is it's as important to tell us what we're not going to do as it is to tell us what we are going to do. And what I mean by that is that we can have a plan, and yes, we've got to be careful, we've got to play what's in front of us, but we've also got to remember why we're actually doing stuff. And sometimes, the world is littered with organizations who've tried to sort of see something that they think is attractive, go for it, A, without the skills, B, without the resources, and really, is it something they ought to be doing, or did it just look sexy at the time? And we used to have a great saying when I worked for the International Thomson Organization. One of the sayings that they used to use with managers was, sometimes it's hard to remember that you got in to clean the swamp where the alligators are biting your arse. And what I meant by that is, you know what it's like. I don't know if you've had experience in your own businesses, but probably when you worked in a job, you go to work, you've got an idea of what you're going to do, you work your socks off, you look at the end of the day and say, I didn't do any of the things I came in to do today, because all I did was, I don't know if you've got kids and you hit that little toy with a hammer and you keep hitting the things and they pop up all over. And I think life and work can be like that, can't it? There's so many things that can distract us that we lose sight of sticking to what we started for. And then ultimately, of course, there's a much better chance of reaching our goals. So going back to the personal bit of this, one of the joys of being self-employed, running your own business is it's about you. It's not about some faceless group of executives sitting in some tall building in Canary Wharf telling you what to think. And what we've got to be very clear of, because we're going to work hard, we're going to put probably far more hours in to this than we would when we work for somebody else. And I'm not saying we were ever lazy when we worked for somebody else, but I was smiling only this week. I was completing a form for Welsh Government, and it was for a startup business. And one of the questions on there was, how many hours a week does the director work? And the answer given by the director was 60 plus. So I put 60 plus in the box and sent it in, and I had a query to say, are you sure that this person works 60 hours plus a week? I said, well, you obviously have never been self-employed, because we know what it's like, don't we? That we don't tend to switch off. We're working quite a lot of the time. I know Jeanette would say we've got to get our work-life balance right and not be stressed, but we will put that long hours in, and we've got to be clear, haven't we? Go on.
I can't argue with that, because I was working 70 hours plus a week in school as a head of faculty.
Really?
I ended up doing well-being.
So yeah, that's not good. But I guess you'd rather be doing it for yourself now.
Yeah.
And what we got to think about is kind of why are we doing it, isn't it? And I've put it into two areas, really. I think we've got to think about our goals. So what do we as an individual want to get out of running our own business? And that could be financial, it could be physical. I mean, Jeanette's case, it might be getting away from doing 70 hours a week in a school. There are these motivations towards, and there are motivations away. But I think we need to remember and be very clear about why we're doing what we're doing, because we will be tired, we will find it hard, it will be challenging, there will be knockbacks. This current situation that we're in now is incredibly challenging. But if we remember why we're here, we will come out of it, I'm sure. But also not forgetting our values as well, the things that are important to us, because there will be times whether, well, let's talk about it a different way. I think when I left corporate world and started my own business for the first time, I can remember going to see a potential client in St. Mellons, of all places, and it stayed with me. I think it was the very first kind of sales call, business development call. And I remember not getting the business and being quite upset about it. And then I was thinking about it. Why would I be upset when I've just spent 15 years doing it for somebody else, when you get lots of knockbacks? And I think the difference is it's about us, isn't it? It's about us and our values. And we almost become embroiled with the product, I think, and the service. And our values are absolutely, I think, core to the way that we behave, the way we design our products, the way we design our services. So we need to be very clear. And of course, we've all got them. We've all got our personal values. We need to be very clear what those values are, because, again, we may find, I can certainly think of examples in my own running of a small business where I've had to kind of fall back on my values to make the right decisions about doing things, about anything from packaging something or selling something or behaving in a certain way with people. So start with yourself, isn't it? Think about your own personal goals and values. And I don't know about you, but this time of year, I always find is a pretty good time to do that, because you're coming to the end of one year and we're moving into a new year and all those things that go with it. And then think about, obviously, the business, because whichever way you look at it, I think our personal goals and values could either be seen as underpinning the business or overarching the business. It doesn't matter which way you see it, does it? But once you're then saying, okay, I've now got a business, I've now got the aromatic oils, I can't say it today, I've got the business. And an interesting thing, it'd be interesting to pick up your views on this when we get to the Q&A, is some people, I think, find it quite challenging to, and I've almost implied it myself, differentiate the business from themselves, because the business is an entity now. The business will be its own thing. So we need to start thinking about the business maybe in terms of that kind of pyramid there, isn't it? Have we got a clear vision for the business? Do we know where we're going? Have we got business values, which of course will be linked to our own? Have we got clear goals? And talk about that in a minute. Strategies is a funny word, isn't it? I mean, there's a million definitions of the word strategy, but strategy often is seen as the kind of broad direction you'll take with your business. So it's not stopping you having tactics which will change, but it's that kind of, for example, we are going to be ethical. You know, you wouldn't expect innocent smoothies to suddenly move away from that strategy, but their tactics, development of products, marketing, etc., will change under that kind of banner. And then right down, of course, to action plans, which are almost the now, aren't they? They're the things you might be focusing on this week, this month, or this quarter. Does that make sense, Jeanette, that kind of model there? Is it something you can relate to in the business already, or is it something you'd have some gaps in, do you think?
A lot of it I've thought about. So I had some time during lockdown to look at my business plan and have a think about it. So again, I'm very ethical. I've just switched to, one of my tactics has just been to switch to renewable electricity. My goals at the moment, my action plans are based around trying to get people into clinic, which is going to be almost impossible now. So that's going to have to change. I kind of I felt a bit like I was winging it a bit, because I had to completely switch everything around so quickly and start developing products, which originally wasn't in my business plan until next year, the year after. And I've kind of had to throw the website together and try and get some selling going. Mission, values and vision. Yeah, I've kind of started to work on those. I've got a strap line. I kind of know where I'm going with it. I've got an idea of what I want the business to look like.
Great.
So it'll need developing.
Yeah, and it always will. You'll continue to develop it, I guess. But when I send this through, I mean, if you find that pyramid useful, just use it as a kind of guide, really, and we'll chat through a few of those things now as well. Rosa, any thoughts, questions at this stage?
Oh. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I've got you now. Your mic is gone.
Hang on now. Oh, I haven't done. Oh, right. I haven't done Zoom on my phone before, and the little bits. Okay. The bits at the bottom weren't there for me to unmute.
Ah, right.
It's popped up now, so I've been able to do that. So yeah.
Brilliant. And so far, any thoughts, comments, questions on what I've been burbling about?
Not really. No, I just, taking it in, really.
Excellent. Well, stop me at any stage, because there's only three of us. It's great, really, isn't it? So we can kind of chat more than be very formal about it. But as I was just saying to Jeanette, this model is just so simple, isn't it? But something that, we probably do need all of those things in place. And more so when you've got people working with you as well, because one big part of planning, isn't it, is the ability, to enable people to support you to plan, but also to be able to share your plans with people. And sometimes even small organizations might have more than one plan, depending on who the audience is. The content would be the same, but it's the spin you put on it, isn't it? Because if you were looking for finance, for example, or you were looking at some other stakeholders, or you were thinking of your own people, they might be slightly different spin on your plan.
Yeah, I've got 3 strands to my business, so I definitely have to plan for them separately.
Yeah, and that could be at the tactical level, I guess. Because the challenge for all of us, isn't it, particularly running a small business, is that we've only got a limited amount of time, limited amount of resource, and a limited amount of money. So we've got to try, I think, particularly down to the strategy level there, to have it as one picture. And then it's the tactics that would be probably where your 3 strands would come in, Jeanette.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So thinking about the vision and mission statement, I mean, the vision statement is a picture of where you see it's grandiose, really, the vision stuff is, isn't it? It's something that probably won't change in 10 years and probably might never be achieved either. It's huge, like Oxfam say that, their vision is no poverty in the world. Well, you could say it's a pipe dream, but it's a vision that they're committed to moving towards. And then a mission, obviously, is much more about kind of how you intend to reach your vision. So I couldn't resist putting the Star Trek one in there, really, isn't it? To boldly go. And I don't think they meant men as in men, did they? They meant man as in all of us. But in terms of powerful vision statements, they should be capturing where you want to go and starting to provide a sort of roadmap. They should be short and simple. And if you look online, I mean, I mentioned Innocent earlier. I think they've got a very, very clear, simple vision statement. Google is another one that I could have shared some examples with you, but I think it would have just taken us too long. But Google have got a good one. And I think if you just searched, other search engines are available. If you searched, and just put in powerful vision statements, you'd be amazed. But why do you think that the recommendation is they should be short and simple?
It's just easy to remember, I suppose.
Spot on, Rosa, yeah, because if they're this big, isn't it? And you read some of them, I mean, I could have shared one with you. I mean, they're just hilarious because they've got all this business speak and all these words. And I hate to say it, Jeanette, you sometimes see it with schools and colleges, don't you?
I had a raging argument with one of our vice principals in the middle of a meeting over the vision statement because she put, what was it? Something achieve, believe, and something else. And I went, achieve needs to go at the end because that's your outcome. And she wouldn't have it. She said, no, we've had it all printed now. And I said, no, achieve is your outcome. It's got to go at the last.
She was having it alphabetical.
Yeah. Oh, she drove me nuts. And it was literally, what she'd done is she'd written a whole paragraph and she just underlined these 3 words in the paragraph. And I thought that is not,
that's not a vision.
Horrendous ones for school.
But we're going to be careful as well is that we were joking about Tesco earlier before you came on, I think, Rosa. Dewi was talking about whatever the strap line is for Tesco, a little bit more or something. I can't remember. But we've got to be careful that marketing strap line is not the vision. The vision is about ultimately where you want to go. And yes, you would share it with people, but your marketing strap line is often quite different. But keep them short and simple, as Rosa said, because you need to remember it. You need to be able to share it with people. And it also needs to be pretty memorable and hopefully motivational. So it's a positive thing, isn't it? We're going to make a positive difference in the way that we run our business. And obviously starting to describe the results that you want to bring together and your team. And do you employ anybody yet? I know, Jeanette, you don't. Rosa, do you employ anyone yet?
No, I don't employ anybody, but I've got a shop and I've recently changed it. So upstairs in the shop, there's a sales room but it's a gift shop. So it's basically other crafters' items.
Ah, right. So you have a team then?
Kind of. So it's other people's items that I'm selling. So I do sort of,
And think about your team, isn't it? Because your team often, in our circumstances, could be our families. It's certainly, going back to Jeanette's example about trying to buy some stuff rapido for Sunday, our suppliers, our accountants, we've got a team around us, which sometimes we don't always remember, and how important they might be to communicate with and to get involved as much as possible in the business. So it's not just a transactional relationship, isn't it? The more people around you understand about what you're doing, the more they're likely to be able to kind of contribute. So powerful vision. Sorry, what was we going to say? Something?
I was just saying yes.
Good. I like yes. And then the other thing, so knowing where we want to go and making sure we can encapsulate that in that simple form is important. But what's also important is knowing how we're actually doing now, not in a sort of broad brush way, as in, well, I think we're doing okay, or as I hear some of my clients saying, we're still here, which is pretty obvious. But making sure that we've actually got a handle on where we are now against those goals that we want to achieve or against that vision. So it takes some time, and again, I think now is, in terms of the year, is probably a good time, isn't it, to stop, evaluate what you've been doing, reflect on it. And it's been the most challenging year I've ever known, having been involved in business for like 40 years. It's just incredibly challenging, isn't it? But I bet you that you've probably achieved more than you might think. So make sure, because if you imagine, there's an old joke somewhere, isn't there, that somebody stops when they're driving their car and asks for directions. I want to get to the Rose and Crown. How do you get to the Rose and Crown? And the person on the pavement says, if I was you, I wouldn't start here.
Yeah.
And you just think, we've got to know where here is. We've got to know precisely where we are. And don't be afraid, isn't it, to evaluate, to monitor. Sure, you've used all those words in education, Jeanette, haven't you? Make sure you know where you are now, what's gone well, what maybe hasn't gone so well, but try and be as objective as you can. How are we doing? And I've a little model there for you, which you might find useful, is thinking about these 5 C's. So where are we as a company? And I'll share a SWOT analysis with you in a minute, but I'm sure you've come across a SWOT analysis before. Where are we in terms of our strengths and weaknesses? Have we got that clarity in terms of goals and objectives? Have we got a positive culture, and not just ourselves, with our stakeholders? Have we got the resources we need? It's fascinating to see. I'm sure you saw Polly's list of things that she put down for this session, and a number of them were IT based, weren't they? But it's making sure you've got the resources to enable you to use those kind of software tools. Mustn't forget about the customers, because without any customers, we ain't got a business. So making sure that we understand the way things are going is interesting. What Jeanette said, isn't it, about having to change really the business model, particularly because people aren't tending to, well, from the lockdown and now in the future can't go for the massage element. So you've got to sell the oils, and obviously you're going to be selling those online. Our competitors, who are they? Who might they be? What are they doing? I still find it fascinating. I was working with a client yesterday morning, and we were we're doing a project looking at a new product that they're beginning to develop to go into the market. And he'd been doing some competitor analysis and comparator analysis. And what he'd found was just phenomenal in terms of who's doing what, where, what lessons we could learn, how we could maybe find opportunities and gaps in the market. So it's about spending time, isn't it, thinking about, and perhaps, adding to the word there, comparators as well, because people may not be competitors, but they may be doing stuff that you do or similar things that you do. Collaborators, we touched on that already, isn't it? Suppliers, people you're in partnership with. More and more, I guess, the model we're seeing now, I was thinking about the models like Amazon and all these other kind of sales platforms. What we're seeing more and more in the current world is alliances, people working through each other, people surfing each other's waves. And then, of course, the challenge for us now is the climate that we're operating in. But the 5 C's is quite a useful way of just saying, where are we now? Where are our strengths? Where are we going? What's going on outside? And then some practical tools. I mentioned the SWOT. Have you ever come across that one? I review a thing called a pestle analysis.
No.
Yeah, I think so. In my previous
life, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's loads of variations. Some people call it a pest, and they take off the L&E. Some people call it a steeple. But what it's designed to do, and it's very, very powerful, is to help us look at what's going on in the environment, outside our business, what's going on politically, what's going on economically, socially, technologically, environmentally, and legally. And the key with it is you can brainstorm it. I'm glad we can use that word now. You can brainstorm it on your own. You can brainstorm with other people, whatever. You can obviously look online for other people's pestle analysis. But the key is to try and identify not the quantity of them, but the actual important ones. the key drivers, if you like, that are going to impact on your business. Because if you're not careful, you can just end up with a list of stuff, and you might start with a list of stuff. What I'll be suggesting to you is you then reduce that list to the most important things. So if you think about the three of us now, isn't it? And probably Dewi as well, if he was listening in, what do you think is the most important technological change that's impacting on us or likely to impact on us?
Social media.
Absolutely. Social media, massive.
Zoom calls and Teams.
Yeah, the fact that we're meeting people very differently. And I suppose it's the whole kind of buying online thing, isn't it? The numbers, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised now as I'm sitting here with you, the doorbell will go in a minute and somebody will be saying, oh, here's a parcel for you from somewhere. And it doesn't matter whether it's, I bought some stuff. Have either of you heard of a company called Good Wash?
No.
Have a look at them online. They're a very small business like you. They started probably 2 or 3 years ago now. They're based in Barry, and they do soaps and lots of other kind of, what's the word? Well, soaps and balms and all that kind of stuff. So they don't do oils though, Jeanette. And the reason they're called Good Wash is because they have an ethical kind of code, and they're community enterprise company or whatever they're called, community company. And I buy stuff off them online, and it appears the next day, and it's brilliant, and it's delivered. And that's the kind of technological world we live in now, isn't it? We expect to be able to order 24/7, and we expect it to be delivered quite quickly.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we've come across this one, the SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you imagine, I suppose a simple way of looking at it is the pestle is kind of looking outside, whereas the SWOT is more about looking inside. So you're looking at your own business, you're saying, what are we good at? And with weaknesses, don't think of them as negative things, because even if we were sitting here having this meeting with Apple or Google or whoever, they would have weaknesses, wouldn't they? They'd have things that they could do better. It's almost like we've all got weaknesses. Opportunities. So are we maximizing our strengths? Are there things that we could be doing that we're not doing? And are there any threats? And this is thinking more about internal threats. And of course, one of the biggest threats most of us have is that we are the resource. And if something was to happen to us, there isn't really a team of other people who could pick up our work. And it's kind of thinking about how we can minimize that, isn't it? Or introduce tactics to reduce the threats. Again, if you decide maybe, because now over Christmas might be some time, it's certainly a time when I'll be reflecting on our business plan and kind of thinking about what sort of year. And interestingly, if you had said to me 2 weeks ago, what sort of year have we had as a business, I just said it wasn't particularly great. But having done some work on it in the last fortnight, it's actually not as gloomy as I thought it was. There have been some, thinking of those 5 C's, there have been some very positive moves with customers. There have been some very positive moves with partners. There have been all sorts of positive things that have happened that, okay, we may not have hit our sales targets and we may not have hit our profitability targets, but there are lots of things that we can be quite pleased about. If you decide to do these, I mean, I'd be more than happy for you to pop your working versions over to me or stick them on Google Docs or whatever you use, and more than happy to give you some feedback, because some of the challenges for us are we may not have anybody we're able to kind of soundboard things off. So particularly over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I've certainly got some time on my hands, and I'd be delighted to give you some feedback if you're working on this sort of thing.
Bless you, that's helpful.
Whatever you do then is make sure that the goals you set, the objectives you set, and I'm sure you'll come across this one, are SMART. That's one you're familiar with, Rosa, SMART?
Yeah, I've heard of that one, yeah.
Yeah. The challenge with SMART is everybody's heard of it. everybody understands what it means, but so few people actually do it. The number of business plans I look at where I come to the bit that says, and people actually put it there sometimes, SMART goals, SMART targets, SMART objectives. And then I start reading them and I think they're not SMART, because SMART is quite challenging to achieve. So if you think about the 5 things, isn't it? Are the goals or the objectives specific enough? So we actually, and a way to think about that is that if Rosa and I were looking at the top, would they mean the same thing? Or would they mean, if I said, I don't know, one I use when I'm lecturing university is that I'd like to have a Porsche. That sounds good, doesn't it? Have a Porsche. All these young people smile and go, yeah, I'd love to have a Porsche too. But what kind of Porsche are you thinking of, Jeanette?
Low
I didn't say Porsche.
Porsche, as in car.
Yeah, what sort of car? What
Low
sort
slang,
of
grey.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah. New, old, shiny.
New, shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that was in your mind when I said I'm going to have a Porsche?
Oh, maybe a black soft top.
There you go.
And there's the difference, isn't it? And I'm thinking about whether those 4-wheel drive Porsches, the big, like Chelsea tractors that all the posy people drive in Knightsbridge and stuff. And that, just think about it, isn't it? If you're going to set an objective, make it so specific that there isn't any doubt. I can see the same picture that you are seeing and vice versa. Make sure it's measurable.
I did that once on a training session in work. I said, because we were talking about criteria for marking.
Yeah.
And I said to him, right, everybody, I said, draw a house. So they all drew a house. So then I drew my house. So I said, did you include a chimney? Did you include a garden gate? Did you include a front door? Did you include 4 windows? Did you include for everything that I have that you have, give yourself 1 point. I ended up with this lovely, I had little tiles on the roof and little smoke coming up to the chimney, and I had little curtains in the windows, and little flowers up the garden. I had a garden path and flowers.
And your point being, unless the criteria are clear, we can all see a very different picture.
Exactly, yeah.
Make sure it's measurable, but be careful, because what we tend to be good at is measuring the easy things to measure, like how much money has come in, how much money's gone out, how much margin have we got, because the financial objectives are relatively easy to measure. Think about measuring the most important things. So going back to your goals, am I measuring the right things, and am I setting the right objectives? With regard to the A, that could be about being, are they the right targets? Are they appropriate? Are they achievable? And in terms of if you've got a team of people, are they agreed as well? Because the worst thing you could do is, you have your own objectives, but somebody else is kind of interpreting them differently. Are they realistic? That doesn't say are they easy, because they can still be very challenging, but we've kind of got to believe that we can actually hit them. So be realistic, challenge yourself, but what you don't want to do is have this little nagging voice in the back of your head that says, I don't think I can really do this, because that will impact on your performance. And then make them time bound. So whether that time bound is 1 week, 6 weeks, a quarter, 6 months, a 12 month, make sure you put, why do you think it's important to put a time bound element on your objectives?
Because you'll just leave them and they'll just go somewhere in the ether otherwise.
True. And I don't know about you two, but I am very much a deadline person. If I don't have a deadline, I will let it drift. I will sort of procrastinate. Whereas if I'm working with Dewi and he says, I've got to have that by the 6th of January, then he'll have it by the 6th of January. It's about having that kind of end, isn't it? So you go, because then you can plan towards it.
Oh, tick it off my list. Yes.
Yeah, well, there is that. There is an element. I think the nice thing about planning is it builds our confidence, doesn't it? It gives us more structure, and there is a certain satisfaction, Jeanette, isn't there, in having achieved?
Yeah.
Now, this is a model have you come across this one before, either of you?
No.
The balance scorecard is just literally, and if you went online, you could probably be reading about the balance scorecard until January, but it's a very simple model to make sure that when you are setting your goals and developing your plan, you actually do it in a balanced way. So you don't just focus on, for example, money, which is the top one on this there, because money is critical. If we don't have any money, we're not going anywhere. But what the balance scorecard says is that money is about getting the other three right. So if you get the customer stuff right, as in you find enough customers, you access those customers successfully, you sell them things at the right price, then actually you will get more customers and you'll get the money through. What do you think the process one's about? Setting objectives about your processes.
Having terms and conditions, your delivery, yeah, how you're going to process your refunds,
yeah,
all your admin-y sort of stuff. I would say that is, personally.
Yeah, Rosa, any thoughts? Because you're absolutely right, Jeanette.
Yeah, the same. I have got a customer in the shop, so I might have to go.
I can see that. Don't worry. You do what you've got to do.
Okay. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's just getting your processes in place, so you know what you're going to do before it comes up, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
So maybe if someone returns an item, what's my process if someone was going to return an item?
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
And every business, however simple and small it is, relies on processes, doesn't it? If you think about, if you try to draw how your business actually operates, it would be quite a complicated look. If you did one of those things where you could see all the interactions and then speeded it up, it'd be like looking at the center of Spaghetti Junction or something. And you're absolutely right, Rosa. It's kind of thinking about, if you go to Marks and Spencer, they've been doing it for 150 years or whatever, and they change them all. But they've got, if you went in there this afternoon and said, I bought this jumper yesterday and I took it home and I'm not happy with the size, they have a process, don't they? Bang, 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 it would happen. And we as small businesses, something I think sometimes that is very frustrating for customers is that we appear sometimes not to have thought about those things. So yes, we need to have slick, I think, customer-centric processes that are in place for virtually every element of the business. So everything from buying stuff, isn't it? Storing stuff, dealing with customers, as you said, good example, dealing with refunds. And I think we should always be looking to improve those processes.
Yeah.
Because they will need to change. Because if you think about the balance again, customer demands are changing, customer expectations are changing. Therefore, processes need to change. If somebody had said to me, even 5 years ago, isn't it, that I'd be able to order a shirt on Next this afternoon and it would be here by 10 o'clock tonight, I would have said, you must be mad. It's impossible. But somehow they make it happen, don't they? It would actually happen. So their processes are pretty slick, to say the least. And then the learning and growth one is about us. It's about people, not only us, but obviously as we start to work with other people as well. It's about recognizing that we need to invest in ourselves and in our people to continue to develop our skills, to continue to innovate, to continue to kind of have time. So what the balance scorecard does is tries to help us make sure that we, think of it as perhaps a four-wheel drive vehicle, isn't it? That if you've got all four wheels going in the same direction and you've got a balance of objectives, you've got a much better chance of having a successful business. Because what's the danger, do you think, of maybe placing too much emphasis on the money?
You lose your customer focus.
Yeah, you can do. And some businesses do it, don't they? I've got a client now where they are owned by venture capitalists. The view is very short term, and they are doing everything in their power to maximize their returns. I can see now they're not investing enough in training and development. They're certainly not investing enough in research and development, which is affecting ultimately their service to clients. And they aren't, but I hate to say it, they've taken almost like a tactical decision to do that because all they want is the money. It'll be a short-term thing, and maybe venture capitalists are short-term. But for us, we need that balance. Do you think there's a danger ever of becoming too customer-centric?
Yeah, I think you can.
I think you can too. Because you could spend almost too much time, couldn't you, dealing with a particular customer. Thinking about you, Jeanette, in particular when you're doing things like the massage, and you've got to be quite disciplined about how much time are the customers actually paying for, what are their expectations, are we clear? Because it could be all too easy to kind of, I know it's only supposed to be half an hour, but I'll give them 40 minutes. Well, that 10 minutes is money, isn't it? It's time, and you could be doing something else. And I think Rose is right. You can, sometimes I think people, link in the finance and the customer. Sometimes they're almost afraid to charge what is a fair rate for what we do and be almost too soft with customers. So there is a danger of
They do seem to want something for nothing, especially in Wales.
Well, I think we all probably do, but I guess the difference is, and if I was to go to if I was to ring the David Lloyd gym this afternoon and they said it was £42 for me to have a 25-minute massage, which I think is what it is. If I said to them, that seems a bit steep, will you do me a deal? What do you think the answer would be?
No, go away. But they do enough business they can.
On your bike, isn't it? Because they've got a margin, they've got their costs, and they know what they've got to charge. And we've got to be confident enough in terms of pricing things, and we to realise that it's pointless us working our 60 or 70 hours a week if we're not going to make any money. So we've got to be careful with all of them, and that's why it's called balanced. So when you think about the objectives you have moving forward into 2021, make sure that you kind of cover all of those bases. You may have priorities, but and be careful not to have too many objectives. Maybe 2 or 3 objectives in each area would be more than enough, because otherwise we won't be able to focus on them. Great if you had a team of people. If you had a finance director, then you could maybe set some more objectives and give them to the finance director to look after. But we've got to manage it all, haven't we?
Yeah.
And then another simple model, which I'm sure you've all come across, this critical path. So making sure that when you plan things, you think about them relative to each other. So obviously you can't do task 1 until you can't do tasks 2 and 3 and 4 until you've done task 1. I don't know, again, do you tend to use these sorts of, this could be on a simple spreadsheet, or you can download some software. Ever used the critical path?
I've got a list of things to do each day that I use. So I start off doing my incomes and outgoings for the day before, so it doesn't take long if I do it every day and things like that. But yeah, I don't think this one would probably be suitable for me in my daily plan.
Not on your daily plan, but maybe on your more kind of whatever whether it's monthly, quarterly, or whatever your business plan is, isn't it? What it helps us do is just see the connectivity between tasks. So you kind of think, well, I can't do that until I get that in place. So that, therefore, is a priority because I might be thinking about the 4th task, but I can't actually do it until. So it kind of prioritizes things, I guess, gets us thinking about what needs to be done in order to get to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I just thought I'd share this with you as a summing up one. This is actually a PowerPoint slide from a real live client, something they use internally and externally, I'm not surprised. and they've just pulled together what we've been chatting about today, really. So they've put on the left-hand side there the vision, what do we want to be, our mission, why we exist, our values, what's important to us. Then their strategy, which is that kind of broad game plan. So how do we intend making this happen? Then their objectives and their balanced scorecard, giving them that sort of measurement and focus. And obviously what they're saying, back to Jeanette's point about achievement, what they're looking to achieve are satisfied shareholders, or that could be stakeholders for us, couldn't it? Delighted customers, excellent processes, and motivated people. I just thought it was quite a nice way of kind of summing up, isn't it, what can be or appear to be quite a complex area. And hopefully you'll find that useful as you start to develop your plans.
See, I always end up planning backwards.
Sorry?
I said I end up planning backwards.
Yeah, why not? Because it doesn't matter where you start, does it? Because you could end up on that one saying, what do we need to do to delight our customers? Mm. And that sets you off on a track, doesn't it? To what have we got to deliver? How do we deliver it? You know, you're absolutely right. If you think about it, I'm sure what they started with was thinking about those 4 things on the right-hand side. And you can do it. You can start wherever you want to, can't you? Often in a small, like our own businesses, we often start, I think, with a vision and maybe some values. We got an idea of what we want to achieve, and we got an idea of how we want to do it, and then we build around that. Other organizations might start with a strategy. We've seen something, we've seen a gap in the market, we believe that we could fill that gap in the market, and then we build it. It really doesn't matter kind of where you start with this. As long as you end up with a why are we doing it, which is the left-hand side, and how are we doing it, which is the values. The strategy is the sort of broadly how we're going to do it, and then you're into, right, if we're going to do these things, we've got to have some clear targets, goals, objectives, call them what you want to call them. And the balanced scorecard is saying to us, make sure you don't just focus on one area, that you have a balanced approach to what you're doing. I mentioned some links, and there they are. As I said to you, I'm available if you want to bounce some ideas off me, if you start working on your plans or developing your plans from where they are now. Don't hesitate to drop me an email or send me some work that you're working on. I will be constructively critical, I can assure you, and helpful and positive. I mean, there is no, if there was a right way to do it, I could just said, here's a great plan, follow this. It doesn't work like that. Your plan's got to be your plan, and you've got to own it. But any input you might want, just pop it across. Any questions? Any thoughts? Any comments? We've got 5 minutes.
Not really. I mean, it's quite clear. I have got a bit of a plan already. But I don't.
A bit of a plan, Rosa. I like that.
Yes, and so I think I just need to go back and revise it, because when I done it, which was in the last lockdown, it did help me to focus my mind in certain places.
Great. And I say, if you'd like a second opinion, and obviously everything you share with us is completely confidential. If you'd like, if you get to the point in this lockdown where you've gone to your next draft, and because sometimes the challenge is, isn't it? We're passionate about our business, we understand it, but actually, if you show it to somebody else, they might ask often the naive questions. How does that relate to that? What does that actually mean? So don't hesitate when you get to that point, Rosa, to pop it over.
Okay, thank you.
That's quite funny, because when I wrote my business plan, I wrote it as me.
Yeah.
Because at the time, that's all I had.
Yeah.
I didn't have premises, I didn't have stock or anything, I just wrote it. And one of the comments that I had from somebody who read the business plan was, your website is big. It doesn't suggest that you are a one-person organization struggling starting out.
Right.
The business plan is not big. So if somebody is reading it and you want to do some corporate work, how are you going to convince them to do it with a business plan that it just talks about you?
Yeah. And like I said earlier, it's something that we need to think about, isn't it? Because yes, obviously, as the principals and the owners of the business, we are very important to the business, but it's that step, I think, of realizing that the business is an entity in itself.
Yeah.
And it's not me or you, or it's an entity in itself. And as it grows and develops, it's a legal entity, but it'll also be an actual entity, and it's thinking about it in the third person, isn't it? Rather than thinking about it as us. Yeah. And I think that can help, can't it, as well? Because, maybe that helps us detach ourselves a little bit as well and have a bit of kind of work-life balance and objectivity. Any other thoughts?
Oh, just a lot of work to do.
There's
a lot of things that what I need to do is go through all the stuff that I've seen and heard the last couple of weeks and pick out the bits which I think are going to be useful short-term, and long-term.
Yeah.
Incorporate them into that action plan.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid. I mean, your tactics can keep changing very regularly, can't they? As long as you know where you're going, why you're going there, and how you intend to get there broadly, because the world is changing so rapidly.
Yeah. I just got a bit of imposter syndrome, I think, at the minute.
Yeah, that's not unusual either, is it? Because you've never run a business before. And now, but that'll come. You'll build your own confidence, won't you? But maybe thinking of it as this separate entity, Jeanette, might help with that as well.
Yeah.
Seeing the business as here and you are there, okay, you happen to be a very important part of the business, but it's not you.
Yeah.
You are now the, CEO of this business.
No, it's a lot to do, because I've now got I'm now re-strategizing what I'm going to do after Christmas, because what I want to do, I can't do, because they've just suddenly gone, we've locked you down.
That's right. So you're going to have to go more down the retail route now, aren't you? Online retail.
Clinical stuff, I can stay open because of my clinical aromatherapy. But my biggest problem is because I'm the only one who does it in a 10-mile radius. Nobody's ever had the access to the service, so they don't know what it is and how it benefits them. So they're not using it as they should, because they've never had the opportunity to.
No.
So what I need to do is that perhaps I need to start contacting the GPs and say, look, if you are getting overwhelmed with people coming to you for mental health issues or stress or whatever, then, you can always refer them on to me and I can pick that up for you.
Absolutely. And it's thinking about it, whether we are selling marketing to the consumer, isn't it? The person who actually has the service, or whether there is, as you say, an intermediary, if you like, between you and them, which would make it a lot easier.
So it's just picking out the bits of my business plan that I was going to develop in a couple of years and bringing them forward.
Yeah.
The problem with that is I don't feel I've planned it properly, because obviously it's not budgeted for properly. So it's a bit of a wing. Some of it is going to be a bit of a wing and a prayer just to get me through, I think.
Yeah. And there will be, I hate to say it, there will be an element of that for all of us at the moment, I think.
Oh, I'm glad that that's a normal feeling, because I was getting a bit worried that I was like, oh, hang on a minute.
No, particularly, and I think it's much worse this year, isn't it, because of what we're all facing and the uncertainty.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll come.
Yeah.
And I must have confidence in what I'm doing.
What's the saying, Jeanette? Nobody plans to fail; they just fail to plan.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no doubt that the clients I work with who had better plans in place have come through this situation more strongly than perhaps those who didn't.
Yeah, it's I've got to remember that I'm still kind of in the breakwater of the business, where I'm still fighting the waves and I've only just got off the island. That's the analogy that
Absolutely.
I use. And I'm not yet into calm waters.
No.
And then if I panic, then I will drown.
I like these anomalies. I think I'm a bit dangerous now. Make sure there's no
And
sharks.
that I've got this far with it, and therefore, obviously, I do have a plan, and everything is going okay because I'm still here and I'm still going, and I'm still at a point where I am moving the business forward. So
Great.
I need to remember.
And the same goes for you, Jeanette. If you get to the point where you develop your plan and you feel that some external input would help, just pop it across.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
But lovely to see you both. Take care. Have a good Christmas.
Yes.
And most of all, I suppose, stay healthy, isn't it? Because without that, we won't be able to do anything. But get your plans together. Pop them across if you want to. Rosa, have a lovely Christmas. Jeanette, take care. Have a lovely Christmas.
And you. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Appreciated.
Bye. Bye.